everyone. Good afternoon. Today, the General Assembly elected the President for its 73rd session. I'd like to introduce Her Excellency, Ms. María Fernanda Espinosa Garcés.
Hello, good afternoon already? Yes. Well, let me first of all express all my recognition and my commitment to all member states of this organization that voted for Ecuador, that supported the Ecuadorian candidacy to the 73rd session of the General Assembly. It is indeed a privilege as Latin American and Caribbean women, the first one, to have the responsibility to lead the works of the General Assembly. I think that, as mentioned already, but I would like to dedicate this election and this triumph to all women, and especially women in politics in all countries of the world. My commitment is and will be, of course, with women and girls, especially with women that face daily political attacks characterized by gender discrimination. My dedication also to women and girls that are victims of violent conflict around the world. I think that achieving gender equality is one of the major responsibilities, and the empowerment of women is one of the major co-responsibilities that the international community has, and this House, the United Nations, has, of course. There are several priorities for the next period of sessions. I will work and start working immediately in a proper transition process with the guidance and the full involvement of President Lajak. I believe that he's done an extraordinary work. I will devote all my time to the presidency and to the transition process, as I already mentioned during the interactive dialogue I held with member states on the 4th of May. I think that among the priorities would be, of course, the implementation of the reform process and to work hand in hand with all member states in this very important transition towards the achievement of a more efficient and more transparent organization. We have ahead of us also the finalizing of the negotiation process of the Global Compact on Migration. I think that we all want a safe, orderly, and regular migration based on a human rights framework. We have also the big commitment of implementing the Addis Ababa agenda on financing for development, the assessment of the 2030 agenda on several key issues such as climate action, such as decent work and work opportunities for the younger generations. We are going to address the issue of inequalities during the next period of sessions as well. There are several items that are already part of the agenda. 15 mandates that have been established by member states are going to be part of the agenda during the next period of sessions. As mentioned, of course, the Middle East, peace in the Middle East, peace and rights for the Palestinian people is also a pending issue in this House, and we will address that with responsibility and in permanent conversation with the Security Council. I'm also committed to full transparency during my tenure, to the full compliance of the Code of Ethics for the President of the General Assembly, and I will ensure that all the activities of the office will be public and are going to be, accessible to all citizens of the world. I think it's also about time that we bring the United Nations closer to the people. And this is very much also a co-responsibility with the media, with the journalists, to translate the work we do in this House into the benefit the improvement of the quality of life of regular people, of regular citizens around the world. We're going to do a strong work of communications. We have a very good department on public information here, a very good team of people committed and working, as I mentioned, to bring our work, the work of this House, closer to the people. I think the organization is walking at firm pace towards becoming every day a more relevant, a more efficient, a more transparent, and more democratic organization. So I would like to yet again reiterate my profound recognition and my thanks to all member states that supported Ecuador in the voting process this morning. I will work with 193 states hand in hand. I will perform as an honest broker, as a convener, impartial, neutral, yet with the capacity of leading member states to take decisions in order to strengthen multilateralism and to better deliver on the commitments that we have taken. So thank you very much. Perhaps a few words in my own language, in Spanish, para señalar que es un privilegio como mujer latinoamericana y caribeño presidir la 73 sesión de la Asamblea General. Mi compromiso estará con la igualdad de género, con los derechos de las mujeres, con la atención especial a las mujeres y a las niñas víctimas de conflictos armados. Estoy muy comprometida también con la Agenda de Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible 2030, con los procesos que están a punto de culminar su negociación, en particular el Pacto Global de las Migraciones, el Pacto Mundial de los Refugiados, la Agenda de Financiación para el Desarrollo. Son 6 de los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible que van a ser evaluados durante el próximo periodo. Podemos destacar, por ejemplo, la acción climática, 3 años después de la adopción del Acuerdo de París, temas tan importantes sobre todo para los países de renta media ligados a al combate a las desigualdades, el tema del empleo decente, de las oportunidades de trabajo para los jóvenes alrededor del mundo. Serán algunas de las prioridades, pero por supuesto, sobre todo, acompañar a los Estados miembros en la implementación del proceso de reforma de las Naciones Unidas. Creo que es una gran noticia para la opinión pública señalar que las Naciones Unidas están en un proceso de reforma, están recalibrando la manera de trabajar para ser cada vez más eficientes y más relevantes, y eso pues se hará con la participación, el involucramiento de todos los Estados miembros. La sesión 73 de la Asamblea será el año de la implementación, de la puesta en práctica de las reformas. Y el mundo tiene que saber que somos una organización responsable y que está trabajando día a día por ser cada vez más eficaz, cada vez más relevante, cada vez con más capacidades de enfrentar los grandes desafíos actuales. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Presidenta electa. Felicidades por este logro del día de hoy. Quiero consultarle en particular si hay algún asunto de América Latina que usted quisiera desde esta posición promover. Ya nos mencionó algunas de sus prioridades a nivel internacional, pero ¿hay algún asunto de América Latina que usted quisiera avanzar? Por ejemplo, temas relacionados con Venezuela, con la situación en la frontera entre Ecuador y Colombia. Finalmente, pues usted sigue siendo la ministra de Exteriores de Ecuador.
Creo que es muy importante que la construcción de la agenda para la próxima sesión se haga de acuerdo a un proceso de consulta. Existen ya 15 mandatos para el próximo año de eventos de alto nivel, de cumbres que deberemos obviamente realizar porque existe un mandato expreso. Los temas que vaya adoptando o tratando la Asamblea deberán ser filtrados y mandatados por los Estados miembros, por supuesto. Como presidenta y como responsable de liderar los trabajos de la Asamblea, estaré muy atenta a escuchar los pedidos, las demandas, pero también a escuchar las necesidades de coyuntura. Seré la presidenta de los 193 Estados miembros.
Congratulations. My first question is, what's your priority as the President of UN General Assembly? My second question is, what's your expectations on the cooperation between China and the United Nations? Thank you.
Bueno, las prioridades las he señalado. Oh, sorry, in English, sorry. It's easier for me to speak Spanish, of course, and I immediately started to respond in Spanish. But of course, the priorities, I had set out the priorities in my vision statement. There are already a long list of issues that are part of the agenda. I mentioned the Global Compact on Migration, the Global Compact on Refugees. I also mentioned a high-level meeting that is extremely important, especially for middle-income countries, which is a high-level meeting on commodities and macroeconomics. I would say that the climate change agenda and the assessment of climate action is going to be also on top of the priorities, and in particular, the implementation of the reform process. We are hopefully finalizing the negotiations of the 3 pillars of the reform, the management, the peace and security and development reform, and it is going to be the time for implementation. This is, I believe, one of the main and major challenges for the next period of sessions. And of course, I am now starting from today to build and organize the program of work for the next session in consultation and in a listening mode with member states.
What's your expectation on the cooperation between China and the United Nations?
Well, I think that China is a very important player of the multilateral system. I think it has a wonderful contribution to make, as every other country, and I'm looking forward to working with China, of course, from the presidency of the General Assembly. Thank you.
You mentioned about the reform process in terms of the management and other things in the UN. How about the long-stalled reform process for the Security Council? How do you plan to reboot the process?
Well, this is a process that has been going on in the system for about 25 years. We have a mandate from 2008 to create an intergovernmental negotiation process that has been ongoing. I will, of course, assess the excellent work that the co-facilitators are doing now to assess what is the situation and, of course, lead the member states to advance in this mandate. Of course, the depth and the pace of the reform process is going to depend entirely on the political will of member states, of all member states. And of course, this is very much a pending issue of the organization.
Thank you. Transparency? Can I ask about transparency? Over here, Matt.
Of course.
One question over here, right? And we'll come back to you. Over there.
Felicitaciones, canciller, por su elección y, por supuesto, el tema de migración es uno de los, se puede decir, preocupaciones más relevantes para la comunidad internacional en este momento. Justo en estos días se está debatiendo acá en las Naciones Unidas el Pacto Global de Migración a través de los gobiernos. ¿Cuál cree usted que debe ser el compromiso de la Asamblea General para que este pacto se cumpla y especialmente se logre que lo cumplan las grandes potencias?
Yo creo que esta es una necesidad compartida porque todos los países finalmente terminan siendo países de migración, ya sea países de origen o países de destino de la migración. La historia de la humanidad es una historia sobre las migraciones de los seres humanos por distintas razones, por lo tanto creo que es fundamental que tengamos un marco multilateral de referencia que establezca parámetros para una migración ordenada y segura basada en los derechos de las personas. Siento que hay una decisión y una voluntad de prácticamente todos los Estados miembros de avanzar con el Pacto Global. Se espera que se termine la negociación en el mes de julio, tal vez se prolongue algo más, pero habrá una cumbre para adoptar el Pacto Global en Marruecos el 2 de diciembre. Así es que, pues como presidenta electa y luego como presidenta en funciones, estaré empujando, apoyando y liderando ese proceso que, como digo, es muy necesario, sobre todo por las circunstancias que vive ahora la humanidad.
You mentioned transparency, and thanks for that. As I'm sure you know, 2 and now it seems 3 recent presidents of the General Assembly are embroiled in bribery cases, essentially. In one of them, the vehicle for the bribes is still in consultative status with ECOSOC. I wonder, do you have a plan to make sure that these type of activities, you'd said you're going to, will you publish who pays who in your office? Do you favor a UN Freedom of Information Act so people can know what funds are being given so that this pattern or trend doesn't continue under your watch? Thanks a lot.
Well, every effort geared towards greater transparency and access to information, I think, is a must within the organization. In all the principal bodies of the organization, not only the General Assembly, but also the Security Council, our executive arm, which is the Secretary General's office, I think it's a collective responsibility. Regarding my own commitment to transparency, of course, as Minister of Ecuador, we have public accounts just to take oath when we are designated ministers. You have to even hand in a certificate of not having your resources in any fiscal heaven. This is, of course, national legislation of Ecuador, but we do that, and I will make sure that everybody can access to my personal information and the information, of course, of the office of the PTA.
We have time for one last question.
Felicitaciones por ser elegida, señora canciller. Quería preguntarle, con respecto a la agenda de denuclearización y con respecto a cómo planea avanzar esta agenda y sobre todo enfocado en el asunto de las Coreas. Y si quiere puede responder en inglés.
Bueno, pienso que lo que hemos vivido en estas semanas, what we have witnessed these past weeks, provides us with great hope in the process of denuclearization. I think that disarmament agenda is a very powerful arm of the organization. It's one of the three pillars, the peace and security, the development agenda, and the human rights agenda, of course. I think that we have hope. We have witnessed and commended the inter-Korean dialogue. Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula it's something extremely positive, not only to create a safer Korean Peninsula, but for the entire humanity. And the processes of non-proliferation and denuclearization should be convergent and mutually reinforcing. And I think that the organization is well placed to advance both these agendas. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Sí, claro. Gracias. Muchas gracias.